WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar and Banjul, 1 p.m. in Lagos. Good afternoon and welcome to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. First, the top stories. Dark Thursday for Senegal as citizens mourn the death of President of the Constitutional Council, Wadr Camara.
He is really one of the most outstanding judges Senegal have had since independence. We appreciate his courage. In the past, he has participated in some outstanding.
Mali and Algeria's diplomatic row officially lands at the UN Security Council without request for any action to be taken. Nigeria's ruling CNSP declaration of Hausa as the national language sparks debate.
I think it's a commendable initiative by the CNSP authorities. I would say that Hausa is strategic. It's a language that's spoken internationally, and it's a language that's spoken to some extent other nationals here in Niger.
And the Bako community of Ghana experiences another conflict resulting in one fatality and several injuries. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Imo Edit with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and a warm welcome to all of our listeners across the sub-region. Newslink begins in Senegal with the death of the President of the Constitutional Council, Mahamadou Wadr Camara, passed away this morning at the age of 73 following an illness. He had headed the country's highest constitutional court since 2023. Many remember his role in the nation's judicial pool in the build-up to political transition. Professor Gogi Jeng is a political analyst and a historian.
He is really one of the most outstanding judges Senegal have had since independence. We appreciate his courage. In the past, he has participated in some outstanding decisions. For example, when the president postponed the elections, it is the Constitutional Council who took the decision to reject the postponement of the election by the president. That was a very important decision, because that decision helped the country regain peace and go to the presidential elections quite peacefully. But apart from that, they have also made some decisions in the past. Some of them have been appreciated by the people, others not got the same appreciation, the same positive appreciation. On the whole, we appreciate the person for what he has done. We can consider him to be really a very positive person, keeping in general to what the law says, rather to what the politicians wanted him to do.
That was Professor Gogi Jeng, a political analyst and a historian. Still in Senegal, political opposition groups in Parliament have presented a request to the Constitutional Council for immediate review of the just adopted interpretative law by the National Assembly on the controversial amnesty law. Addressing a press conference Wednesday, the opposition united under the Taku Walu coalition said the current state of the amnesty law is not in the best interests of the Senegalese citizens. The controversial law, among other things, seeks to exclude offences related to blood crimes from the scope of the amnesty granted at the end of Macky Sall's term in office. Christopher Tijo was there and filed this report.
Despite various civil society organizations' call for an extensive inclusive consultation on the amnesty interpretative bill, the National Assembly, by a 126 majority decision, defied their request and proceeded to adopt the bill into law on April 2. The interpretative bill, among other things, aims to eliminate criminal offenses and violations that occurred during the ex-war administration. But the opposition at a press conference expressed their dismay at at the adopted interpretative law and has petitioned the Constitutional Council for a review of the interpretative law. Here is Anta Babakar Ngom, a member of the opposition.
We've actually sent to the Constitutional Council our request to actually fight against that law, the interpretative law that was actually voted, the bill that was voted inside the Assembly. But this bill to pass, what they were supposed to do initially was to call on these conversations and these talks between the civil society. Everybody needs to give their advice or their thought in this question.
The minority also expressed worry about what it calls democratic backsliding and the lack of respect for fundamental rights by the government.
We took the time to explain to the people the lack of respect that we feel coming from the Prime Minister himself, the fact that they are not respecting our rights, and we don't feel like this assembly is the breakage that they talked about. I'm worried about it. It's not a good look so far.
In view of these concerns, the opposition have resolved not to participate in today's parliamentary session, of which the Prime Minister Usman Sonko was expected to brief the House.
Christopher Tisha with that report.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Let's take you to the Sahel region with updates on the Mali-Algeria diplomatic rift, which continues to gain attention within the regional space and international community. As of Thursday morning, reports emerge about Algiers and Bamako both filing a complaint with the United Nations Security Council. Mali, in a letter to the Council dated April 7, denounced a drone attack, describing it as an act of aggression perpetrated by the Algerian army. Bamako also accused Algeria of complicity with terrorist groups active in the region. Algiers, for its part, condemns the Malian drone operation as a flagrant violation of its airspace. In its letter, Algeria also denounced an attempt at manipulation orchestrated by the Malian transitional authorities in this affair. It is, however, worth noting that none of the two has requested any specific action or meeting to resolve the dispute. In Mali, the former Minister of Economy and Finance is currently admitted to the emergency unit of a health facility in Bamako after experiencing a breakdown. Reports emerge about Bouary Sissoko's health crisis in recent days since it is incarceration in 2021 without a trial. She's been prosecuted in connection with the purchase of the presidential aircraft and the over-invoicing of military equipment to the tune of 130 billion CFA francs under the regime of Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. Last week, the Supreme Court refused to release him on bail. Francis Boniface explains.
Bouary Sissoko is now receiving medical care at a health facility in the Malian capital. Suffering from undisclosed illnesses, the former Minister of Economy and Finance has seen her condition deteriorate at Bole, the women's prison where she has been incarcerated for more than 3.5 years. A worrying situation, according to her lawyer, Jangina Tunkara. While Bouary Sissoko is still awaiting trial, last week, the Supreme Court once again rejected her request for provisional release under judicial supervision. The trial opened last October and then suspended for the collection of additional information. The former Minister of Economy and Finance under the regime of Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta is being prosecuted for damage to public property in connection with the purchase of a presidential aircraft and the over-invoicing of military equipment to the tune of 130 billion CFA francs. The case dates back to 2014.
WDR's Aliu Charms report, voiced by Francis Boniface. In Niger, the Refoundation Charter is now in force, and the decree providing for its promulgation was signed by General Abdurrahman Chani a few weeks ago. Among the notable changes, French is no longer the official language of Niger, making way for Hausa as the national language among the country's 11 spoken languages. In accordance with Article 12 of the Charter, French becomes a simple working language. Sankule Janko has more details in this report by WDR's Murtala Zubeiru in Niamey.
According to Article 12 of the Refoundation Charter, that is no longer an official language. The article now mentions the 11 national languages most widely spoken in Niger. Among these, Hausa has been chosen as the national language. A decision welcomed by the Association of Young People United for Development. Uzeru Maman is its president.
I think it's a commendable initiative by the CNSP authorities. I would say that Hausa is strategic. It's a language that's spoken internationally, and it's a language that's spoken to some extent other nationals here in Niger. So we need to put sentiment aside and understand that in reality, in any case, it's Niger that wins. I wouldn't put forward a minority or a majority. No, I would say that we are one and indivisible. We've said it many times, and we'll say it every time the opportunity arises.
Within the independent movement for a new Niger with justice and equality, the opposite is true. Abdurrahman Ide Seni is the movement's coordinator.
We don't
want the authorities who should be promoting national identity to make choices about one language and leave the other behind. So they just can tell us which other languages are left behind and in which category they fall. Otherwise, we really call on them to correct the mistake, because it's a monumental error that people can't accept, because we are in a sovereign state, a unilateral state. So we wouldn't want them themselves to bring division between us. Hausa, German, Tamashek, and Tobo are all overlapping languages in Niger. No one language is superior to the other.
In the previous constitution, all Niger's languages had the status of national languages, and French was the official language. The authorities' new decision is far from unanimous and continues to provoke reactions.
Sankle Janko voiced their report as filed in by our Niamey correspondent Murtala Zubeiru. And to security matters, at least one person was killed and several others injured following violent clashes between a youth group and police officers in Baku, in Ghana's Upper East region. The unrest reportedly began when one faction involved in the ongoing chieftaincy dispute demanded that women from the opposing faction trading at the local market vacate the premises. From Accra, Nadia Detete report.
There's renewed tension in Boko after violent clashes between youth and security personnel left one person dead and at least two others injured. The chaos broke out on Wednesday after a faction involved in the ongoing chieftaincy dispute reportedly asked women from the rival group to leave the local market. Police intervened following a report leading to a confrontation. Gunshots were fired during the standoff, with the youth allegedly opening fire on the officers. In what appeared to be a retaliation, angry youth set fire to the residence of the Boku Divisional Police Commander, the home of the CID officer, and the police barracks. No injuries were reported during the torching of these properties. Police and military forces have since brought the situation under control. Personnel were evacuated from the barracks and patrols have been intensified. As part of efforts to maintain order, Interior Minister Muntaka Mubarak has announced a review of the curfew in Boku and its surroundings effective Wednesday, April 9, 2025. The curfew hours now run from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. daily. The minister is urging chiefs, elders, opinion leaders and youth in the area to exercise restraint and to seek peaceful and non-violent ways of addressing their disputes. Meanwhile, a total ban has been placed on the carrying of arms, ammunition, or offensive weapons in Boku and surrounding communities. The Interior Ministry warns that anyone found in possession of such items will be arrested and prosecuted. For WADR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
In Nigeria's conflict-ridden northeast, a war of words is brewing between Governor Babagana Zulum of Borno State and the Nigerian military. The commotion may cast shadows of the region's fragile security gains. At the heart of the dispute is a divergence in perspectives over the true state of the insurgency, a matter with serious implications for peacebuilding and development. WDR's correspondent Usman Umar has more details in this report.
The latest disagreement between Governor Zulum and the military command of Operation Hat-and-Kay is more than just a clash of narratives. It highlights a critical gap in trust and coordination within Nigeria's counterinsurgency framework. Governor Zulum, while expressing concern over what he described as Boko Haram's resurgence in parts of Borno, warns that terrorists are regaining territory with little or no resistance. His remarks, citing recent attacks and kidnappings, sparked strong reactions. In a detailed response, Operation Haɗin-kai, a military operation focusing on the troubled northeastern region, rejected claims of territorial loss, emphasizing that no local government area is under insurgent control. The military listed recent successes from the neutralization of high-profile commanders to the destruction of over a dozen terrorist camps and warned against attempts at politicizing insecurity. But beyond the rhetoric, analysts say such disagreements risk undermining a unified front against insurgency. At stake are the morale of troops, public trust, and the momentum of reconstruction efforts across communities recently freed from insurgent grip. Observers caution that contradictory messages can embolden extremist groups, stall civilian resettlement, and complicate cross-border military cooperation, especially in remote flashpoints like the Lake Chad Islands. Wadr, during a recent mission to Borno, discovered that over 2,000 insurgents and family members have surrendered since 2021, a milestone the military sees as proof of strategic progress. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, 94.9 FM, Dakar, and live on wadr.org. Here's a reminder of the top stories. Dark Thursday for Senegal as citizens mourn the death of the President of the Constitutional Council, Wadr Camara. Mali and Algeria's diplomatic row officially lands at the UN Security Council without request for any action to be taken. Niger's ruling CNSP declaration of Hausa as the national language sparks debate. The Boko community of Ghana experiences another conflict resulting in one fatality and several injuries. And still ahead in the news, we have the press review, a guest interview, and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Well, don't forget you can listen to us live on wadr.org and join a live stream on YouTube and Facebook. After several days of tension, the Ivorian government and the education training sectors inter-syndicates met around the negotiating table yesterday. The meeting aimed to find a way out of the crisis now that the Ivorian education system has been paralyzed for 4 days by a strike initiated by the unions. They are demanding payment of an incentive bonus. Abdullah Hassan tells us more.
At the end of the discussions, 3 main resolutions were adopted with a view to preserving the current school year. Firstly, it was agreed to organize an inclusive workshop on April 17, 18 and 19, 2025, bringing together all stakeholders around the theme, examination of the premium claim, development of a work schedule. The feedback meeting on the workshop's conclusions is scheduled for Tuesday, April 22. Lastly, both parties reaffirmed the need for responsible dialogue in keeping with the spirit of the social truce. The trade unions, for their part, called for the release of their comrades who had been arrested or imprisoned and for the lifting of the financial sanctions imposed following the work stoppages observed during last year's strike. In response, the government representatives reiterated the principle of the separation of powers while pledging to bring these grievances to the attention of the executive. They also asked for a gesture of appeasement on the part of the unions, notably the immediate suspension of the strike called on April 3. In return, the unions, while welcoming the outcome of the exchanges, announced that they will consult and make a declaration at the general meeting later today, April 10.
Marcel Ariston-Blair's report presented by Abdullah Hassan. Now, Liberia's Minister of Gender, Children and Social Protection, Gbeme Horace Colley, has shed light on the alarming increase in sexual and gender-based violence across the nation. The latest report from the ministry covering the period from December 2024 to date highlights a disturbing trend that has left many citizens concerned about the safety and well-being of vulnerable populations, particularly women and children. Speaking on a local radio station in Monrovia on Wednesday, Horace Colley said there have been 40 cases reported through the ministry's newly established call center. She attributed the rise to a troubling phenomenon for family compromise, wherein families often minimize or overlook acts of violence, including rape, that occur within their communities.
We have opened the call center at the ministry, which was meant to address national effort to provide the public with additional options for reporting instances of sexual and gender-based violence, child abuse, and child labor, and other situations. So since we opened the center, to date we received 40 cases of persistent non-support, 40 cases between December to now. We've had 30 cases of physical abuse. We've had 7 cases of sexual abuse. Also, from the call center, we've had 20 cases of rape, like I mentioned. We've had 3 cases of early marriage. Again, I want to mention, we do have a big challenge with a lot of effort being made to create awareness, but culture is killing the fight. Families will rape involved for another 6 months to go within the pilot phase, because we thought it would be the pilot phase would be an opportunity for us to learn from it.
Liberia's Minister of Gender, Children and Social Protection, Gbeme Horace Colley.
This is the Newspaper Review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the Newspaper Review.
The Newspaper Review.
Today's press review takes us to Accra, Ghana, where WDL's Nadi Dictates is standing by with briefs of major headline stories.
Greetings from Accra. Let's start off with the Daily Graphic newspaper front page. Ghana and Czech take a leap forward, pledge stronger ties. Also on the front page, impeachment. Presidents not obliged to seek response from Chief Justice. That's according to the Attorney General. Also here, Gold Board to begin operations next month. And final story, Communication Ministry saddled with debt and strangulating contracts. That's it for the Daily Graphic newspaper. Let's now take you to the Ghanaian Times front page. President woos investors, says Ghana has enabling environment. Other stories, Forestry Commission tasked to rake in more revenue from ecotourism, and Trades Union Congress opposes privatizing state-owned enterprises. Other stories here, High Court acquits and discharges Jache Kwesen and security operatives storm in Team Fojo's residence. To the Daily Guide newspaper now, NIB storms MP's house in Rambo style. Ghana Airports Company denies leaking flight data to Reverend in Team Fojo and arrest all of us, minority fumes. Other stories, Supreme Court adjourns Chief Justice removal injunction indefinitely, and 28 illegal miners arrested, 85 excavators as well as 2 bulldozers seized in the Western North region. The New Crusading Guide newspaper front page, NIB goes after in Team Fojo. Also, Supreme Court adjourns hearing on suit challenging removal of Chief Justice. The Chronicle newspaper front page, Lands Minister directs Forestry Commission to go commercial, and I stand by the truth. That's according to Reverend Intim Fojo, the Member of Parliament for Asin South. The Daily Democrat front page, Sam George dismantles dubious NPP tech contracts, and Amaboa targets full digitalization of Lands Commission. And that'll be it for the Daily Democrat newspaper. The exclusive newspaper front page, Sam George probes corrupt contracts under NPP rule. Other stories here, Mahama to launch Feed Ghana on April 12, and Land Minister reaffirms government support during Forestry Commission. The final newspaper I have here, the National Enquirer front page, Mahama dissolves National Cathedral Secretariat. SIM card re-registration goes digital. That's according to Sam George, the Minister for the sector, and government seeks partnership for national airline. That's according to the Transport Minister. And that'll be it for what the dailies are reporting this morning. Is back to you in the studio.
Many thanks, Nadia Dictated there with the press review.
Politics, analyses on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Well, our guest is Harold Thomas, lead risk coordinator at the Sierra Leonean Ministry of Health, who speaks to us about the ongoing vaccination drive against Mpox.
Sierra Leone actually declared a public health emergency on Mpox on January this year, when we had our first case on the 10th of January this year. So since then, we have gotten a number of cases. To be precise, as of yesterday, we have a total of 150 confirmed cases, and 72 of these cases are active cases, meaning they are on treatment facility, and we have 76 that are fully recovered, and unfortunately we also have 2 deaths. So that's the situation in Sierra Leone. And the Minister of Health in January had actually declared mpox as a public health emergency. So this is the situation we are dealing with now. For the vaccine, we all know that the mpox vaccine is just one weapon in our arsenal of weapons in fighting against, mpox. We have other non-pharmaceutical interventions like simple hand hygiene, reporting cases, and prompt management of cases and proper surveillance.
So let's talk about the ongoing vaccination exercise. Which of the region is first of targeted in the exercise?
If you look at the epidemiology now, you will find out that the western area, urban, where the capital sits, has the highest number of cases. They have 109 of the total 115. And then the western area, rural, which is very close to the western area, urban, has the second highest of 24. And only 8 of the 16 districts in Sierra Leone are reported or are recording active cases.
What explains the caseload, this high caseload of cases or infections in the western and urban regions like you mentioned?
Well, the western area, urban and rural, in fact, we are the very first case there, and it's densely populated. And you know that this is the seat of the government, and it's the capital city, and we have densely populated area. But we are trying to actually further look at the dynamics of the spread of the disease. But to what we know, there is, the interaction here is quite different from other districts.
Harold Thomas, their lead risk coordinator at the Sierra Leonean Ministry of Health. And in sport news, it's all about the CAF Champions League and the UEFA Champions League. And Sankli Danko is here. Take us through.
Yes, Imo, let's begin with the CAF Champions League because Orlando Pirates completed the CAF Champions League semi-final lineup after a goalless draw against MC Alger to a goalless draw on Wednesday, to advance following a 1-0 win in the first leg. Stellenbosch FC of South Africa also continued their run in the in the Confederation Cup, and they've won defending champions Zamalek 1-0. Of course, this also followed a goalless draw, so they are through to the semi-finals. Unfortunately for Cote d'Ivoire's Asec Mimosas, they have been knocked out of the Confederation Cup quarterfinals following a 1-0 defeat to Morocco's RS Barkhane, who won 2-0 on aggregate on both legs, 1-0. And Algiers Constantine also booked a place in the semi-finals of the Confederation Cup after beating USM Alger, after a tense 4-3 penalty shootout on Wednesday night. And in the Champions League, UEFA Champions League, of course, PSG continued with their fine run of form following an impressive 3-1 win against Aston Villa at Parc des Princes on Wednesday night. And meanwhile, Barcelona put 4 past Borussia Dortmund without a response as they eyed the UEFA Champions League glory.
That broke my heart, Sankli.
You sound like a Dortmund fan.
No. I told you, maybe because of how we have perceived Dortmund over the years.
Yeah.
But it's surprising to see that they'll fall this 2-0 to Barcelona.
And then just remind me, like probably you were thinking this is an old Borussia Dortmund.
Yeah.
But this recent Borussia Dortmund it's not as good as they once were, and so many people who are really following football are not that surprised that Barcelona were thumped at Borussia Dortmund really. And the interesting thing is that the Barcelona striker, Lewandowski, who scored 2 goals for Barcelona, was the main man for Borussia Dortmund, and that place used to be his stomping ground.
I wonder how the other teams will be feeling, knowing that ex-player is one dealing with them.
That's the beauty of the game, Imo.
Indeed, Sankli. Thank you so much for sport. And that's it on this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and the team for the technical support. Do connect with us on all of our social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, at WDR News. Stay tuned for our environment program, Enviroscope with Abdullah Hassan at the bottom of the hour. I am Imo Edit. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via